Dr. Eliza Marino sat at her desk long after the office lights had gone dark. She stared at the tiny camera resting in its padded case. It was no bigger than a paperclip, yet it held the promise of revealing a world that no human had ever seen. For months she had sketched ideas, run calculations, and fought doubts in her mind. Now, with the camera finally built, she felt a mix of excitement and fear. The idea began on an ordinary morning when Dr. Moreno and her colleagues discussed the limits of what science could observe. They spoke of heartbeats, brain scans, and blood tests, all ways to watch life. But no one had ever looked on the other side of that line. What happened in the moments after death? How did the body change? Did any signals flicker on before everything went quiet? A few brave souls joked about peering into a coffin. Then, to everyone's surprise, Dr. Moreno said she would try it for real. Her team gathered in a small conference room the next day. There was Dr. Paul Chen, a physicist who designed sensors, and Dr. Maya Singh, an ethicist who worried about crossing lines. There was also Lena, a doctoral student who would run data checks, and Marcus, an engineer who built the control unit. Dr. Moreno laid out her plan. Place the tiny infrared camera and a microphone inside a sealed coffin. Bury it with a donated body so they could record the final hours of life and the early stages of death. Then retrieve the data afterward and study the images and sounds. Dr. Chen's eyes lit up at the technical challenge. "We can build a system that stays powered for days," he said. Marcus nodded. "And I can shield it so the burial environment won't fry the circuits." But Dr. Singh's face was serious. "We must think through the ethics," she warned. "Families may object. What if someone calls it disrespectful?" "We are dealing with human remains," Dr. Moreno agreed. "We will seek approval from the review board. We will only use volunteers who give clear consent. We will handle everything with the utmost respect." Over the next weeks, Dr. Moreno prepared her case. She met with the university's ethics committee and presented every detail. She showed how the camera worked silently, how the microphone would pick up only sounds inside the coffin, and how all data would be encrypted. She emphasized that the research could teach us more about organ decay, help forensic scientists set more accurate time-of-death estimates, improve the care of patients in palliative care. Dr. Singh added a section on how they would treat the donors with dignity, returning their remains without damage once the study was complete. Committee members asked tough questions. What if the camera showed something supernatural? How would they report it? Would they face legal trouble if families saw the footage? They wanted assurances that any images released to the public would be vetted first. Dr. Moreno answered each concern calmly, acknowledging that they might need to destroy recordings if they seemed disrespectful or misleading. Finally, after hours of discussion, the committee voted to approve the experiment under strict conditions. Elisa felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Now the real work began. In a nearby lab, Marcus and Dr. Chen built the coffin chamber. They cut a small port in the coffin wall and fitted a metal tube that led to the camera. They sealed all seams with a special resin to keep out moisture and soil. Lena tested the battery pack, making sure it could run for at least 72 hours. Then they attached temperature and humidity sensors to monitor the inside environment. Every wire was tied in perfect loops, so nothing would snag when the coffin moved. Word spread quietly around campus. Some people were curious. Others whispered that it was morbid or even mad. Dr. Moreno ignored the talk. She focused on the two volunteers who had already agreed. They were both older, healthy, and had no close family. They wanted their bodies to serve science. One was a retired teacher named Robert Hayes. The other was a baker named Clara Wu. They signed detailed forms, allowed interviews, and asked to meet the team. Dr. Moreno visited them in their homes, thanked them for their donation, and described exactly what would happen. Clara smiled and said, "If I can help someone learn about life after death, I will be happy." Robert nodded. "I've been a teacher all my life. This is my final lesson." On the day of burial, the sky was overcast and cool. A small group of students and technicians gathered at the natural burial ground at the edge of town. Dr. Marino wore a plain gray jacket and jeans, trying to look casual. She carried a clipboard and a small bag with extra batteries. Lena held a tablet ready. To record the sensor readings, Marcus had brought a toolbox with spares. Dr. Singh watched quietly to make sure they followed every rule. They placed Clara's body gently into the coffin, aligning it on its back with hands crossed. Then Marcus slid the camera assembly into the tube and locked it. The lens faced the head, while the microphone sat near the chest. A small green light blinked once to show the system was running. Lena checked the tablet. "Signal is good," she said. "Audio is clear. Temperature is normal." They closed the coffin lid and sealed it with 6 clamps. Then they lowered it into the earth by pulley. The soil was damp and the coffin sank. Slowly, a hush fell over the team. Marcus wiped his brow. "This is it," he said softly. Dr. Moreno took a deep breath and pressed the start button on the tablet. A final beep confirmed the recording had begun. The ground was filled. Back in, and the team scattered to avoid drawing attention. Back at the lab, they set up a control room with monitors and headsets. For the next 72 hours, they took turns watching. During the day, the images looked black, broken only by the faint outline of a face. At night, the infrared glowed. Red, casting a gentle light on Clara's features. They saw her hair rest on the pillow, her chest rising once as air pockets settled, and then stillness. The temperature sensor slowly dropped, marking the cooling of the body. At first, everything was quiet. Then, on the second night, Lena noticed something unusual. A soft glow seemed to flicker near the top of the coffin. It looked like a tiny dance of light around Clara's temple. She called Dr. Chen, who rewound the footage. "It's not a glitch," he said. "The infrared is picking up heat variations. But the pattern is strange. It pulses every few seconds." Soon, Dr. Moreno joined them. She watched the glow, her heart racing. Could it be reflection from soil layers? Or maybe the lens heating up, she wondered. Marcus checked the hardware log. No spikes in power. No lens shifts. Dr. Singh looked on, concern etched on her face. "We need to be sure this is real before drawing anything." The next morning, they gathered again to decide what to do. The glow had appeared 3 more times, always at night. They debated if they should stop the experiment or let it run. In the end, Dr. Moreno insisted they continue. "We got ethics approval. We must follow through." So they watched on. On the 4th day, the recording shut off as planned. The team drove back. To the burial site before dawn, they dug carefully until they reached the coffin. Marcus unfastened the clamps, and Lena held the tablet as they powered down the system. They lifted Clara's body into a stretcher, gently cleaned the coffin interior, and removed the camera assembly. Then they filled the hole again, marking the site with a simple wooden plaque. Back in the lab, they began to analyze the data. Every frame mattered. They saw the slow descent of body heat, the shifting moisture patterns, and the quiet settling of tissues. The microphone had recorded soft pops as pockets of air escaped. Yet what lingered in their minds was that nightly glow. They could not explain it. Dr. Marino felt both awe and unease. She knew that what they had done was groundbreaking, but she also knew that science demanded patience and proof. As they prepared their report, she thanked Clara again in her heart. Without her gift, none of this would be possible. Dr. Moreno realized that even in death, there were mysteries waiting to be unveiled. And she promised herself that they would approach their next steps with care, respect, and an open mind. The lab felt both electric and heavy the morning after they retrieved the camera. Soft lights glowed over rows of monitors showing streams of black and white infrared images, sensor readouts, and audiographs. Dr. Elisa Moreno stood in front of the main screen, dark circles under her eyes. She watched as the video played back that strange glow around Clara's temple. It pulsed like a heartbeat. She tapped the spacebar, and the video paused. The glow flickered again, steady and rhythmic. Lena hovered beside her, clutching a thick notebook. "I've logged every time it appeared," she said, flipping pages. 12 instances over 72 hours, mostly between 2 and 4 in the morning. She pointed to a table of timestamps. Marcus leaned over her shoulder. Nothing else changed at those times. No power surges. No outside interference. Dr. Paul Chen adjusted his glasses. The temperature readings show a tiny rise in heat. Each time the glow appears, about half a degree Celsius. He rubbed his chin. But I can't think of any physiological reason in a deceased body for that pattern. Dr. Maya Singh watched them silently. She had been cautious about this experiment, worried about how people might react. Yet seeing her colleagues so driven delighted her. What if it's a natural decomposition process we've never seen? She asked. Bodies break down, gases form, fluids move. Maybe this glow is a side effect. Lisa shook her head. The infrared camera detects heat, not chemical luminescence. And we have no evidence of any bioluminescent reaction inside the human body. She tapped a button and brought up the audio waveform. Listen to this. They clicked play. Soft, low-frequency hum filled the room, barely audible. It rose and fell in tune with the glow. Lena paused the playback. That hummed right before the glow. She pointed at the graph. And it ended as the glow faded. Marcus frowned. Microphones shouldn't pick up frequency that low from skin and tissue. The metal and wood of the coffin would dampen. Dr. Chen swallowed. So where is it coming from? The room fell silent. Each of them felt the weight of the unknown. Elisa drew a slow breath. We need more data. We should run another trial. She looked at Lena, who nodded eagerly. Yes, but with Robert Hayes this time. We have his consent ready. They planned carefully. Clara's experiment had taught them 3 important lessons. They must optimize camera placement, test audio sensitivity, and add another kind of sensor. Dr. Chen suggested a tiny electromagnetic field detector to catch any subtle changes during those pulses. Marcus designed a second microphone with a laser Doppler vibrometer to sense minute vibrations on the coffin walls. Lena prepared extra memory cards and batteries. They scheduled Robert's burial for the next week. In the meantime, they mapped out protocols to avoid mistakes. Dr. Singh wrote a memo emphasizing respect for donors and recommended they hold a private symposium before any public release. We must guard against sensationalism, she wrote. Our goal is knowledge, not headlines. On the day of Robert's burial, the sky was clear and sunny, a sharp contrast to Clara's overcast day. The team arrived before dawn, carrying the new coffin chamber. The natural burial ground glowed with morning light. They moved efficiently, almost ritualistically. Robert's body lay ready on a clean linen sheet. His face looked peaceful. Marcus slid the dual camera assembly into place. The new sensors fit snugly beside the infrared lens and microphone. Lena tested the connections. All channels live. EMF detector zeroed. Vibrometer calibrated. Dr. Moreno pressed the start button. A quiet chime confirmed recording had begun. They lowered the coffin, and the earth swallowed it. Then they returned to the lab, hearts pounding. The next 72 hours felt longer this time. The control room glowed with red infrared screens. That made Clara's features look ghostly. Now they had 2 live feeds, one for Clara, one for Robert. Their sensors ticked in columns of data. On the first night, nothing unusual happened. Bodies cooled, settled, and remained still. But on the second night, at 3:07 a.m., both feeds recorded a synchronized soft glow around each donor's heads. The EMF sensors spiked slightly. The vibrometer detected a faint vibration on the coffin walls. The audio picked up that same low hum. Lena shouted, "Pause, play back." They crowded around her. On the big screen, 2 circles of dim light shimmered in tandem. Dr. Chen's mouth dropped open. "They're in sync," he whispered. "The same pattern." Lisa felt a thrill of excitement and fear. Rewind 10 seconds. They watched. The frames before the glow, shadow flickered across the coffin interior, as if something moved. But nothing had changed. Dr. Singh frowned. Can soil pressure or earth tremors cause this? She checked a geophone sensor log. No seismic activity detected. Marcus scanned the hardware logs. No power fluctuations. all systems steady. They replayed the audio. The hum had a clear waveform now. Lena ran it through filters. It's not a mechanical resonance. It's a pure sine wave at 7 Hz. She looked up 7th harmonic. That's in the alpha brainwave range. Elisa's heart pounded. Alpha waves happen in relaxed, awake brains. But these bodies were dead. Could brain tissue still generate alpha rhythms minutes after death? She asked, her voice quiet. No one answered. They spent the rest of the night cross-checking instruments, ruling out errors. When dawn came, they realized they had captured something real and baffling. By mid-morning, the lab had transformed into a hive of activity. Graduate students buzzed around, analyzing sensor logs. Postdocs assembled spreadsheets. Dr. Moreno held a meeting. We have to be rigorous. Let's document everything. We will publish preliminary findings for peer review. But we will withhold any public statement until we rule out all artifacts. Dr. Singh agreed. And we should honor Clara and Robert by anonymizing their identities publicly. Their families asked for privacy. Eliza nodded. He will refer to them as Donor A and Donor B. Over the next days, they ran more tests in the lab. They simulated burial conditions with dummies. Nothing produced the glow or hum, not even soil layers or moisture. The signals only appeared with real human. Donor speculation swirled. Dr. Chen suggested microscopic bacterial activity. But bacteria don't emit infrared bursts or low-frequency hums. Lena proposed chemical reactions, yet none matched this pattern. Eliza realized they stood at a crossroads. The data hinted at new biology or perhaps a phenomenon that bridged life and death. She called for an emergency ethics review. This is evidence of lingering brain activity after death. The implications for organ donation, forensics, and end-of-life care are huge, she said. We must handle carefully. The committee agreed to monitor progress. It commended the team's respect for donors and the thorough protocols. Yet they warned that any suggestion of consciousness after death would generate public outcry. Meanwhile, news of the experiment leaked. Rumors spread online. Scientists see soul light. Researchers prove afterlife. Social media exploded. Headlines ran wild. Dr. Moreno watched the chatter with alarm. We cannot let this spiral. She drafted a press note emphasizing that the findings were preliminary and might be explained by new tissue physics. At the lab, tension built. The team worked around the clock to gather more data. They added a third donor transfer, but delays in consent slowed them down. Dr. Singh reminded everyone, we cannot rush or cut corners. One night, as Eliza stared at the recordings, she thought of Clara and Robert. They had trusted the team with their final gift. She felt humbled and awed. She whispered to the empty room. We owe them the truth, however strange it may be. The end of the week, they compiled a detailed report. Synchronized glows. Hums at exactly 7 Hz, EMF spikes, and tiny vibrations. No known process could explain all 4 phenomena together. The team agreed on one thing: they had discovered something beyond their imagination. Elisa closed her laptop and turned off her monitor. She walked down the silent corridor, her footsteps echoing. In her mind, she replayed the glow, the hum, the mystery. She knew this was just the beginning. What came next would test the boundaries of science, ethics, and even belief. But in that quiet hallway, she felt a simple truth. They had dared to look beyond the final boundary, and what they saw would change everything. Night had fallen when the team settled into their makeshift control room for the first time. The air was cool, and the soft hum of computers filled the space. Outside, the campus was quiet, but inside rows of screens glowed with the infrared. Feed from Clara's coffin. Dr. Eliza Moreno sat at the center, watching the grainy images flicker like an old silent film. Lena and Marcus took seats at nearby stations, their eyes trained on data streams and audio readouts. Dr. Paul Chen hovered by a whiteboard covered in charts. And Dr. Maya Singh observed from the back, notebook in hand. In those early hours, nothing much happened. Clara's body lay still, her features bathed in the faint red light of the infrared camera. The temperature sensor showed a steady decline as her body cooled, just as any science text would predict. The microphone remained silent, and the soil outside the coffin pressed in evenly. At first, the team felt relief. Their equipment worked. They could record without interruption. That was a small victory. As midnight passed, fatigue settled over them. Lena rubbed her eyes. Marcus cracked his knuckles. On the screen, Clara's hair rested on the fabric pillow as if she simply slept. Dr. Chen adjusted a dial and checked the readings one more time. "All clear," he said softly. "No anomalies," yet none of them wanted to leave. They took turns peeking at the feed, whispering about possible glitches and calibration checks. They told stories to keep themselves awake, sharing jokes about ghost stories and haunted labs. Laughter echoed softly among the machines. By the second night, a rhythm formed. Someone watched the video feed. Someone monitored the sensors. Someone logged every detail. The team created a simple chart of times, temperatures, and any slight movement. They spent hours staring at numbers that barely changed. In the darkness, every small sound or flicker felt monumental. A creak from the building roof sounded like a warning. A stray mouse scurrying past the control room door made all of them jump. Each time they reminded themselves, this was science, not superstition then. It happened. At 2:42 a.m., Lena, who was reviewing the sensor logs, noticed a tiny uptick in temperature. She blinked at the screen. "Hold on," she said, pressing pause on the infrared video. Clara's face appeared frozen in time, but around her hairline. A faint glow had appeared. It lasted less than a second, like the wink of a firefly. Lena pressed rewind. The glow blinked on again, exactly at the moment when the temperature arose by 0.4 degrees Celsius. She called Marcus over. Marcus leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "Another power surge?" he asked. He checked the system logs. Nope. Power feed was steady. No spikes. He tapped the microphone channel. Audio. Silence. They scrubbed. The audio track. Nothing. Could be a reflection, Marcus suggested hesitantly. Maybe some heat from the circuitry bouncing off the coffin wall, but Dr. Chen shook his head. "No," he said. "We tested for that. Well, the camera and electronics are all shielded. There should be no stray reflections." He folded his arms. "This is real data." Dr. Singh scribbled in her notebook. Glow at 2:42 a.m. Temperature rise, no audio. They stared at the paused frame. Clara's features were peaceful, her eyes closed, her hands crossed over her chest. The glow was subtle, like the last light of sunset fading from a window. For the next 2 hours, they watched in silence. The glow did not return. But in its place, they noticed something else. A slow pulse of the chest area as tissue shifted, breathing without breath. It was not breathing, of course. It was the settling of bodily fluids, the compression of air pockets, yet on the infrared feed, it looked like a gentle inhale and exhale. They watched the temperature line dip and rise in time, as if Clara's body still held life's rhythm. Marcus checked the timestamps. "Fluid settling," he said quietly. "Physics, not physiology." But their hearts beat faster. The next morning, sunlight seeped into the lab and chased away the red glow of the screens. The team felt drained, but exhilarated. They gathered around a table laden with coffee cups and leftover sandwiches. Dr. Marino leaned back, staring at the chart. "We saw 2 anomalies last night," she said. "A glow and a pulsing pattern. It's both tied to temperature. Changes." Lena nodded. "Right. I've logged them." Both occurred at roughly 15-minute intervals after the first glow. Marcus added, "No audio, no vibration, just heat." They spent the day reviewing footage in slow motion. They pointed out every flicker, every tiny shift. They ran the audio. Through high-gain amplifiers, they scanned the EMF sensors for stray fields. Nothing explained the glow. Nothing contradicted it. They realized they were witnessing a phenomenon no one had ever recorded. The thought made them both excited and uneasy. The third night was different. They worked with strict schedules, so no, one fell asleep on duty. At 1 a.m., Dr. Chen took the first watch. At 3 a.m., Marcus and Lena took over. Dr. Moreno and Dr. Singh rested for a few hours, ready to jump in if anything happened. The social media rumors had begun, whispers of undead light and ghost camera. But inside the lab, they focused. On facts, at 2:07 a.m., a sudden low frequency hummed through the control room speakers. It was so quiet that only the highest volume setting picked it up. Lena frowned. Play that back. They listened. The hum lasted nearly 2 seconds. It was a smooth sine wave at around 7 hertz. It hummed again at 2:42 a.m., the same time they saw the glow. And then again at 3:17 a.m. Each time, the temperature rose by about half a degree. Each time, on the video, Clara's head glowed softly. Dr. Singh watched the readings alpha waves. She whispered, "Human brains sometimes show 7 to 13 hertz when relaxed." She looked at Clara's body, but she's dead. The room went silent. No one spoke for a moment. The only sound was the steady click of a mouse. They can't be brain. Activity, Marcus said firmly. In a corpse, neurons are inactive. We should not record brain waves.
After.
Chen rubbed his chin. Then what if some chemical reaction in the brain tissue produces a tiny magnetic field that the EMF sensor picked up? He pointed to the EMF log. There had been slight field fluctuations, almost imperceptible. It matches the hum times. He tapped the board. EMF spikes, hum, glow, temperature. All 4 at once. The thought made their heads spin. They triple-checked the logs. They tested dummy runs. Nothing produced even 2 of the 4 signals together. The pattern only occurred with Clara's body. They pulled Clara's medical records. She had no neurological disorders, no metal implants, no unusual conditions. She was a retired teacher who had died peacefully in her sleep. Yet here was evidence of something they could not explain. The control room grew tense as the night wore on. They felt the weight of discovery. If they reported any of this, people might think they had found evidence of a soul or of consciousness. After death, headlines would scream proof of afterlife. But their scientific instinct told them to be cautious. They needed more evidence, more tests, and more minds. At 4 a.m., the final glow appeared. The hum, the EMF spike, the glow, the warmth all in perfect harmony. Lena pressed record on her notes. Marcus copied the data onto a backup drive. Dr. Chen took photographs of the screen. Dr. Moreno stared at the VHS-like grain of the infrared feed, feeling as if she peered into the unknown. "We have to dig deeper," she said. "This is just the start." By dawn, they had logged 14 glow events and hums. They had precise timing, sensor correlations, and field readings. They felt like explorers who had found a new continent, but had not yet mapped its boundaries. Dr. Singh looked at them and said, "We must decide the next step. Do we run another trial, or do we pause and analyze before moving on?" They all knew the answer. They needed more data, but they also needed peer review before risking misinterpretation. They wrote an interim report and circulated it. 2 trusted colleagues. They held a private meeting with the ethics committee too, discussed possible implications. They arranged for a 3rd donor with different conditions, a younger body, a different burial soil, and a separate site. They designed the next trial to test variables one by one. The work felt monumental. Late that morning, the team gathered for a short break. Fresh air and sunlight felt strange after hours in the infrared glow. They walked outside, stretching. Sore legs and tired eyes. Dr. Moreno looked at each of them, feeling proud and grateful. They had crossed a bridge into new territory, but she also felt the weight of responsibility. They had to handle this carefully, ethically, and respectfully. Clara had given her body for science. Team owed her honesty and integrity. They returned to the lab with renewed purpose. Marcus cleaned the equipment. Lena organized the logs. Dr. Chen ran simulations of heat transfer. Dr. Singh drafted new consent forms that outlined possible findings and uncertainties. And Dr. Moreno began drafting the outline of a paper, careful with each word. She wrote, "Preliminary observations indicate recurring transient thermal events, low-frequency acoustic signals." and slight electromagnetic fluctuations in postmortem human remains under controlled conditions. It sounded dull and cautious, but she knew the reality was far more profound as she typed. Her mind drifted back to that first flicker of light. It had been like a heartbeat, a gentle reminder that death still held mysteries. Clara's family would think. She hoped they would understand. And she felt a deep sense of wonder at the world they had uncovered, a world beyond imagination. ChatGPT said, the lab felt charged with purpose as the team prepared for the fourth night of observation. Everything was in place: the infrared camera, the microphone, the EMF detector, and the laser vibrometer. Dr. Eliza Moreno walked between the monitors, tapping on screens and checking cables. Marcus adjusted the power supply, making sure every line was secure. Lena reviewed her checklist one last time, and Dr. Paul Chen confirmed the calibration of the sensors. Dr. Maya Singh stood by with a logbook, ready to record any event. They had decided to test a new variable this time. Instead of burying the coffin under damp soil, they had chosen a drier spot farther from the trees. The soil there was sandy and light. The team wanted to see if moisture levels affected the strange glow and hum they had recorded. Clara's and Robert's burials had both been under loamy earth, so this new environment offered a fresh comparison. The fourth donor was Mr. Samuel Torres, a retiree who taught music and had a gentle smile in life. He had given his consent, hoping to aid science just as Clara and Robert had. The sunset turned the sky pink as they loaded Samuel's body into the coffin. His skin looked calm in the gentle light, his hands resting by his sides. Marcus slipped the camera assembly into the viewing port, and Lena confirmed that every sensor was live. "We're green," she said, tapping the tablet. Dr. Moreno pressed the start button. A soft chime sounded, and the countdown began. Team lowered the coffin into its sandy grave, then filled the hole quickly. Samuel's burial was done in silence, a hushed ceremony to honor his gift. Back in the lab, the control room glowed with red infrared feeds. For feeds now, Clara's, Robert's, and Samuel's. The screens showed dim outlines of faces and chests. Monitors displayed sensor readings in real time. The hum of computers and soft click of data logging filled the room. The team settled into shifts. Marcus and Lena first, then Dr. Chen and Dr. Moreno, with Dr. Singh always on standby. The first night passed quietly. Samuel's body behaved like any other corpse, cooling steadily, no sudden movements. The team felt hopeful. If nothing happened, they could focus on analyzing earlier data. But they all knew the importance of watching every hour. On the second night at 2:42 a.m., an event echoed across all three coffins. Lena, who was on watch, saw the infrared screens flicker. Clara's and Robert's heads glowed as they had before, and now Samuel's did too. It was the first time the glow appeared in a sandy burial. Lena's heart raced. She leaned in closer and saw that, like the others, Samuel's glow pulsed 3 times in quick succession. The temperature sensor on his feed jumped by 0.5 degrees Celsius. The EMF detector showed a tiny spike, and the laser vibrometer recorded a micro vibration on the coffin wall. Lena hit pause. "Everyone look." The others gathered around. Marcus checked the log. "Timing is exact 3:07, 3:17, and 3:27 for Samuel," he said, reading his notes. But Clara and Robert had glows at 2:42, 2:57, 3:12. They were 15 minutes apart. Chen studied the data. Samuel's intervals are 10 minutes. Apart, that's different. He frowned. "So the timing varies with each donor." Dr. Moreno tapped her pen against the table. "Yet the pattern of glow, temperature, EMF, and hum holds. We have a new environment, yet the phenomenon persists." She looked at Dr. Singh. "Does sandy soil change our theory?" Dr. Singh thought for a moment. Moisture was lower, but the body still showed the effects. "That suggests moisture. Isn't the sole factor. We need to consider something inherent in the body after death." They tracked every pulse in that night's footage. The hum on Samuel's feed was clear and pure at 7 hertz. Marcus played the audio. The team listened as the control room filled with the soft vibration. "Alpha frequency again, Doctor," Chen said. "It's uncanny." "But alpha waves come from living brains." He shook his head. "Dead tissue should not produce that." In the early hours, they chased down every possible explanation. They tested a soil sample to rule out piezoelectric effects. They measured ambient vibrations in the lab. They even looked for insects or rodents that might cause movement. Nothing matched the signals they recorded. The phenomenon seemed tied only to the human remains and the sensors inside the coffins. By dawn, the team was exhausted but exhilarated. They gathered around the data printouts, drinking coffee and comparing notes. Samuel's results deepened the mystery. Dr. Marino summed up, "We have a repeatable effect under different soil conditions." Donor A, B, and now C all showed synchronized glows, thermal pulses, EMF spikes, vibrations, and low-frequency hums. The timing varies, but the sequence remains. EMF spike just before the glow. Thermal rise during the glow, hum overlapping both, and vibration at the coffin wall. Lena flipped through her notebook. Samuel had the glow at slightly different times, but always between 2 and 4 in the morning. Marcus added, "It never happens after sunrise. Maybe temperature or pressure cycles in the earth play a role."
Oh.
Dr. Singh nodded. "Or maybe internal body chemistry changes in a circadian rhythm that persists after death." Dr. Chen frowned. "Circadian rhythms require active cells. In death, cells degrade quickly. Still, some proteins might remain active for hours." He tapped his pen on the desk. "We must explore all angles." They scheduled the third night for analysis, not data gathering. They would watch again, but focus on confirming results rather than adding new donors. The team took shifts, but the pace slowed. They spoke less, listened more. They rewatched old footage, compared graphs, and stared at numbers that suggested a new frontier of science. On the third night, they saw the events repeat for Clara and Robert. Samuel's coffin did not show the glow again. Instead, they recorded only a faint vibration at the expected times. His temperature had dropped too low for a noticeable rise. The EMF spikes were too small to catch. The hum was barely audible. Samuel had yielded a weaker signal. Sandy soil might have cooled his body faster, dampening the effect. The team felt a mix of triumph and frustration. They had proven the phenomenon under new conditions, but they also saw its limits. Dr. Marino rubbed her temples. "Every donor is different. We need variables: soil type, moisture, body mass, age, health condition." She looked at each team. "Remember, we cannot expect a single experiment to explain everything. We need multiple trials with varied conditions." In the pale light of the next morning, they held a meeting. Dr. Singh proposed drafting a detailed proposal for further funding. Outlining the need for a larger sample, Dr. Chen suggested collaborating with another university to gain more donors. In varied burial sites, Marcus offered to design more robust sensors. Lena volunteered to lead data analysis and recruit graduate students. Dr. Moreno agreed. "We must expand the study, but we must also be cautious. Let's not reveal too much until we can explain at least part of this." As the team packed up their gear, they reflected on what they had learned. They had seen a glow that no one expected, heard a hum that had no clear source, measured an electromagnetic signal in a dead body, and felt a vibration in soil and wood. They had pushed past the boundary of known science. The world outside would call it ghost light or proof of a soul. But they knew it was more likely a physical phenomenon they had yet to understand. Dr. Marino walked through the lab, turning off monitors one by one. As she reached the door, she paused and looked back. At the darkened control room, she felt awe and responsibility. Clara, Robert, and Samuel had all given their bodies for this research. The team had to honor their contribution by seeking truth, not sensationalism. She stepped outside, breathing in the crisp morning air. Sky was clear and birds chirped nearby. The natural burial ground lay beyond the fence, quiet and undisturbed. Dr. Moreno felt a deep respect for the cycle of life and death. Science had given her a glimpse into that final passage, but the journey was far from over. As the sun rose, she knew the next steps: more experiments, more analysis, more collaboration. The mystery of the glow and hum called to her. She felt driven by curiosity and by the memory of those who had entrusted her with their final stories. In that moment, she promised herself that they would continue. They would explore the boundary between life and death, armed with tools, respect, and an open mind. And perhaps one day, they would bring light to the darkness that follows our last breath. ChatGPT said. The team gathered early in the lab before dawn. The red glow of the infrared monitors still filled the room. But today, they planned to power down the cameras and focus on their final analysis. Dr. Elisa Moreno stood by a long table. Covered with printouts of charts, graphs, and photographs from every trial, she rubbed her fingers over the images of the faint glow, remembering each moment it had appeared. Clara, Robert, and Samuel had each given their bodies, trusting the team to treat them with respect. Today, the team would honor that trust by seeking clear answers. Lena arranged stacks of sensor logs, grouping them by donor and by trial. She had spent late nights coding a program to compare temperature changes, spikes, frequencies, and vibration readings. The data showed patterns differences for each donor, yet a consistent sequence of events. Lena pointed to a cluster of timestamps on one chart. Every glow happened between 2 and 4 in the morning, she said. And each time, the temperature rose by about half a degree. Then the hum and the EMF spike just before. Marcus tapped his pen on the table. But look here, he said, showing a set of graphs from Samuel's trial in sandy soil. The glow was weaker, and the tempo changed. That tells me the environment matters. The soil type, moisture, even how deep the coffin lay might affect the results. Dr. Chen leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. We have enough to propose. A theory, he said. Perhaps what we see is a physical phenomenon tied to chemical reactions in tissue as decomposition begins. Heat may build briefly, causing the glow in infrared. The chemical breakdown could release charged particles, creating EMF spikes. The pressure of expanding gases might vibrate the coffin wall just enough for the sensor, and the hum could be the sound of tiny gas pockets collapsing or shifting. Dr. Singh nodded. That makes sense, she said quietly. It ties all 4 signals to decomposition processes. But why the strict timing and rhythm? Why alpha? Frequency for the hum. She tapped a finger on her notebook. Alpha waves are linked to living brains. But 7 Hz might simply be the natural resonance frequency of those gas movements or chemical cycles. Elisa studied their faces. Each had worked tirelessly for weeks, and they all longed for clear answers. If our theory holds, we need to test it, she said. We should simulate those chemical reactions in the lab with tissue samples and sensors. We can recreate the moisture, the soil pressure, even the gas composition. Then we see if we can. Reproduce the glow, the heat pulse, the EMF spike, the hum, and the vibration. Marcus smiled. I can set up a test chamber in the biolab. We'll get pig tissue standard for decomposition studies, embed the sensors, and control each variable, Lena added. I'll adjust the code to flag any matching patterns. If we see the same 4 signals in order, we'll know our theory is right. Dr. Chen tapped his glasses. And I'll refine the sensor calibration. We need to rule out any chance that the equipment itself causes these readings. I'll run blank tests with soil and sensors alone, then add tissue bit by bit. Dr. Singh spoke next. Meanwhile, I'll begin drafting our findings for peer review, emphasizing that these are preliminary physical observations tied to decomposition, no mention of souls or afterlife. Stick to the data. Eliza felt relief and pride. Step-by-step plan would lead them to answers. She glanced at a photograph of Clara's quiet face on the wall of the control room. She whispered, "Thank you," and resolved to honor every donor with honest science. In the weeks that followed, the team split into smaller groups. Marcus and Dr. Chen worked in the biolab, watching sensors record from controlled tissue samples. They saw the faint heat pulses and tiny voltage changes. They heard low-frequency hums as gas bubbles formed and collapsed. They felt micro-vibrations on the chamber wall. The pattern matched what they had recorded in the coffins, Lena analyzed. The new data, late into the night. Her code flagged over 100 matching events in multiple trials. She compared timing and amplitude across different soil types simulated in the lab. She confirmed that moisture levels and temperature influenced the strength and speed of the signals. Clara's soft glow had been stronger because her burial soil was damp and loamy. Samuel's glow was weaker in sandy soil. Dr. Singh prepared a paper that carefully described the methods, the sensors, the donors, the controlled lab tests, and the results. She wrote in simple, clear language so other scientists could reproduce the work. She included charts showing sensor readings side by side for real burials and lab simulations. She emphasized respect for donors and the ethical process that guided the research. Finally, they held a team meeting in the lab's conference room. Dr. Chen presented the lab simulation data. "We've reproduced the phenomenon," he said. "It's a physical process of early decomposition, gas formation, heat release, minor electric activity, and acoustic signals." He showed graphs aligning real burial data with simulation data. The room filled with excited murmurs. Marcus added, "This means we have a new tool for forensic science. We can use these signals to estimate time of death more accurately. By measuring initial decomposition signals, investigators could narrow down when a body was buried." Lena chimed in, and medical examiners could use sensors to study decomposition in different climates and soils, improving death investigations worldwide. As Dr. Singh concluded, "Our findings demystify what once seemed supernatural. There's no soul flicker, no spark of consciousness. It's nature's chemistry and physics at work. But there is beauty in understanding how life's final chapter unfolds." Eliza felt a swell of emotion. They had faced the unknown and found clarity through science. She looked at her team and said, "This is our crowning achievement. We turned mystery into knowledge, all while respecting those who contributed. I'm proud of you all."
Amen.
They smiled and clapped softly. A few months later, their paper was published in a respected journal. Headlines noted, "New forensic technique for time of death," or "Scientists reveal physical signals of early decomposition." The team's names appeared, along with acknowledgments to the donors. No talk of ghosts or afterlife, just careful science. They had taken a camera into a coffin and discovered real signals of death's first moments, beyond imagination but grounded in nature. Late one evening, Eliza walked through the not-quiet lab and paused by the console where the red glow once filled the screens. She ran her hand over the dusty control panel. In the weeks since publication, she had answered questions from journalists, trained forensic teams, and planned new studies on different climates. Yet she still felt wonder at that first glow in the dark. She switched off the final monitor and whispered, "Good night." She thought of Clara, Robert, and Samuel, teachers, bakers, musicians who had made this possible. Their final lesson had been a gift, teaching science about death itself. Elisa left the lab under a sky full of stars, knowing that in exploring the boundary between life and death, her team had illuminated a small corner of nature's deepest mystery.